Hello and welcome to the Possibility Partners Show. I'm your host, Ande Lyons, your Chief Possibility Partner, and I am here to share Andelicious advice for all of us in life. And these are conversations with our guest and with the audience, and after the show with the comments from you replay viewers about how to keep us going and humming along, tips, tools, advice, insights, inspiration, whatever we're called to bring to help us navigate the murky waters sometimes of life. And especially on today's show, we are going to be discussing how there are so many twists and turns sometimes in life. We don't know if we're coming or going, or sometimes we'll be traveling down the road thinking we've got everything nailed and so much certainty. And then out of the blue, boom. Or as my book says behind me here, Who Moved My Cheese? If you recall that book back, I think that came out in the 80s, a long time ago. That was really about anticipating change and anticipating those twists and turns and detours and dead ends and really paying attention and listening. So I'm so thrilled you've tuned in today. To the live viewers, yay! I'm so glad you're here, sharing your delicious energy. And to the replay viewers, mwah, 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 mwah. Thank you for watching, and thank you for bringing your delicious energy to the show. I'd love to stay connected with all of you. I love hearing what's going on in your life, whether professional or personal. And you can find me on all the social media platforms, but specifically, you'll find me at my favorite bar. That's what I call Twitter. At Ande Lyons is where you can find me any day of the week. So certainly reach out there, Facebook, Google+, Instagram, wherever works for you, LinkedIn, etc. And if you want to stay tuned in to the Possibility Partner Show, I invite you to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Andelicious Advice. I'm so grateful for that. Thank you. Thank you. Now you can see my guest here on the platform with me today, a phenomenal woman who has had exciting transitions in her life as she's evolved from, entering womanhood and on into life itself. And she will share her stories with us today, as well as her insights and advice. And for those who know her well, I know for me, I'm on the edge of my seat because she is transitioning as we speak. So I can't wait to get all the details from her. Please join me in welcoming the so delicious goddess, Jill Leigh. Hi, Jill. Thank you for joining us.
Hello. How are you? How are you?
I'm so glad you're here. And before we dive into the details that I'm very anxious to hear about, excited to hear about, let's talk a little bit about your background, how you got started out in the world professionally and the different twists and turns that happened that brought you here to where you are today.
Oh my goodness. Well, way back in the dark ages, I started in software sales. And at a time when it was really men in software sales, and I was kind of this sort of token woman running around. So I learned a lot about keeping up with the guys. Not all of that was good, by the way. But I went from there into several different corporate things over the years, a lot of sales roles, a lot of management roles, mostly entrepreneurial companies. And my very last, as I call it, real job was with Inc. magazine. And that was in 1990. And I know, 1990.
Right here in Boston, folks. We were neighbors.
Right, we were neighbors. That's right. So I worked there for quite a while as a corporate sales VP or director or something. I sold their sponsorships to their conferences, Growing the Company conference, their customer service conference, the Inc. 500 conference. And then I realized that what I was really good at doing was fixing broken sales forces. And that is the minute I got my sales organization up and running and doing really well, I got really bored. And of course, when you have a really high producing sales organization, that's when the manager makes a lot of money. Yeah, so I would leave. Brilliant. So I finally realized, okay, that's a product, and that is not that's not a role. That's a product. Become a consultant, Jill, and go fix broken sales forces. So I did that for quite a while, and moved it along. Went into call center business, all kinds of things, and in 2002 had a really ugly transition. It's the one where call centers all went to India. And I didn't want to go to India, and I lost my business. And so that was the ugly transition.
And how do you anticipate that, Jill? Right?
In one day we went from an operating business to down the tubes.
Crickets.
Yes. Yeah, it was intense. And my business partner was located in another state. So the bank where we had the loans were interested in me and not my partner. And to this minute, I have a gag order on what the bank is and how much I was joyfully allowed to pay to get out from all of that. But I learned a lot about transition in that moment.
Yeah.
And that was really it for me. That was the end of my corporate life. And I moved along to the energy world, which I'd been studying concurrently. It just became, Ande, it was truthfully, I thought, all right, I've done everything else. I've run every other kind of role and title in a company that I could possibly run. All that's left is energy work. I wonder if I can make a living. And so here I am, all these years later.
Wow. What was it about energy healing, though, that you felt called to pursue?
Well, it's kind of interesting because I really was starting the work to learn about myself. Mm-hmm. And as I learned about myself, I got really interested in how quickly I could move from one situation to another and grow and evolve and shift and change. And I got really interested in talking about that with people. And that really took me down the road of energy healing. Initially, it was really about just evolving myself. It wasn't about energy healing. So I just, kind of the rest was history. As I started talking to people about it, it just became something where they said, well, can you help me with that? And then I realized, I think I'm in a business here.
And then, and then my understanding is that you were in the business of energy healing, right? And yes. Then you start seeing yourself going back as you used to be in sales training. You became more of a teacher.
Yes. And I've been teaching. I was teaching on and off since 92, but it was very casual. But in 2003 or 4, it just got very formal. And I started running classes and built the Energy Healing Institute in Boston at the time, ran a classroom-based training program and had a practice there and so forth. I was on Bromfield Street in Boston, in the Boston Common. And then when I moved out to Oregon in 2013, I took the majority of the program online and run a 7 or 8 day training program in a classroom environment at the end of all the online curriculum. Wow. So I'm training practitioners to integrate energy healing into their practice.
See, I love that because sometimes that's how it works. Sometimes we're entrenched in our corporate training and our world and et cetera, and we have the falling down. Everybody knows my story with Goddess Granola. I had the lightning hit not once but twice to stop that business, or I would have kept going with it. And it stops you in your tracks, and it's not easy to transition out of that when it happens out of the blue. And I know folks watching, if you've ever been let go someplace, it's the same thing. So I love how you transitioned into something more holistic for you that felt like a good fit. It felt like an entrepreneurial adventure for you, and that you figured out how to make a living at it. Yay!
Yay! Yes.
But it takes me around to what's so important, which is the word transition. And it happens in work, it happens in life. And it's not always easy to embrace, to hold up as something that, that we can easily go, oh, okay, that's what we're supposed to do next. Oh boy. Uh, and
Yeah.
how do we land on our feet after something like that? I mean, I know here in New England, it's one thing to feel the joy of the transition of winter into spring. That's a
Yeah.
delicious transition.
And you can have that transition from upright to on your little keister in the ice storms too. So
That's right. That's right. And so, but there are the big transitions, whether you're coming of age or you become an empty nester or you transition out of a long-term relationship or marriage and get divorced. There's so many different forms of transition and change. But what you talk about that I really love, Jill, is about how change is the constant that we have in our life. So how do we allow, and what have you learned along the way on how to allow change to flow through us?
yeah, the one is, I'm in a big change right now, and it took months and months and months to really get to the place where I thought I knew maybe kind of sort of what I might be doing. And I found a lot of it had to do for me with just slowing down. And um, I kind of dialed back what I was talking about out in the world. I spent a fair amount of time with myself, meditating, being pretty quiet, listening a lot. And I found that interestingly, in this particular transition, it started with a little bit of anger, maybe too strong a word. Well, maybe not. I was annoyed. I was
Yeah.
pretty darn annoyed. And I realized that I really couldn't stand in what I had created for myself anymore.
Okay, everybody, just let's take a moment and think about that. I couldn't stand, and that means, standing in the presence of what she had created. That's a huge moment in your life because you worked hard to build this business. You worked hard to create the momentum. You have fans that adore you, need you, love you. And yet you, as you said, it's an annoying and yeah, it can fill you with anger moment where
Yeah.
you realized that you could no longer stand. And that, of course, I attribute a lot of that to your own personal awareness, Jill.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, all of our emotions are about, what we're doing inside of ourselves. And I could be mad at everything that was happening out there, but the reality was it's what I had done for myself. And I had created something that I found to be unsustainable. And so sitting in that anger was really powerful for me because I had to acknowledge, okay, this is not working. It wasn't about money as much as it was about how I was doing what I was doing. And that was pretty powerful to sit with that and then allow the time to pass so that something new could form.
Anybody relate? I mean, anybody watching the replay or watching live now? Do I see any hands raising? What it's like to have that happen. And sometimes it happens kicking and screaming. I mean, we get complete, in an area of our life. We can get complete with our business. And when you're first launching and first starting out, you can't imagine that ever happening. It's so exciting. It's so wonderful. And I think another key point that you brought up, Jill, was you couldn't sustain it. What had happened that you just felt, I can't sustain this?
Several things. When I was back in Boston, the Energy Healing Institute was a very viable choice. It's a Harvard Medical School town. I was hanging out at hospitals, working with patients in the hospitals. I was connecting with doctors. I was really looking at an institute that was being formed as a sort of a body of work that absolutely was about me at one level, in that I was writing the manuals, I was standing at the front of the classroom. But it was really about something larger than me. And I hope that'll be true for the long term. But when I moved out here and took the business online, there was this sort of building standing in front of me, even though there wasn't a building, called the Energy Healing Institute. And no matter where I turned, I was sort of invisible. And that was sort of one sort of strange thing to work my way through. Because at one level you could say, well, I am Energy Healing Institute. And in another level, you could say, no, I'm really Jill Leigh. And there was something that just stopped working about being invisible. The other thing that happened was when I first started thinking about taking this business online, I started working with a marvelous consultant. And his statement to me from the very beginning was, make sure that as you do this, you are only working with experienced practitioners. They have to already have a practice. They have to know how to run a practice. They have to be integrating energy healing into their work, because you are not someone who is really going to work with new practitioners and love that work. And I thought he was nuts. So I very carefully wrote it all down, Ande. I could show you the page.
I'm laughing because and people were right? Are we all nodding, going, oh yeah.
Yeah.
You can tell things like that and going,
yeah, no. So that's what happened. Was I started working with a lot of new practitioners and realizing, man, I'm running circles around them, not because they're bad people, but because I'm so far past that I'm really not the one who should hold the space for someone who's just thinking about starting a practice. And so that was the other really big piece. I ended a training in November where I announced to the people in the room, that's it, I'm not doing new practitioners anymore. And I also announced to them that I'm letting go of Energy Healing Institute. So all of my curriculum is living there in Energy Healing Institute. I have 20 some odd online courses. I imagine most of them are going to make some sort of a transition with me as I figure all of this out. But life is changing. And truthfully, Ande, I don't even know what all the answers are today. I just know the Institute is it's not gone. It's still there until I have JillLeigh.com up and running. EnergyHealingInstitute.org will be sitting there.
And that's where people can find you right now, right?
Yes, that's where they can find me.
And if you wanted to take if someone wanted to take your courses online, where are you located? Your course is located.
Yeah, the courses are under the training tab on the menu bar, and you'll see that there are individual courses. There's a practitioner program. There's continuing education courses. There's a lot of content there. There's also some free downloads so that you can get a sense of the kind of work that I do with the chakras and the auras, and the breadth of what I talk about in my teachings.
Well, and here's a moment of gratitude, which is you created a body of work. You needed to serve the world while you were serving your own journey, your own soul and professional journey in the world. And now it can sit there and continue on without you because it's a course curriculum that you created that people can walk themselves through. Yes?
Close. I'm very close. Most of the courses will be available as self-paced learning in the next couple of months.
Yeah. One thing you brought up that I found very powerful too, Jill, is how the building, especially the online building now, instead of you being out in the world and hi doctors, hi patients, hi hospital administrators, moving around, everybody's like, Jill, yo, yay, Jill.
Right.
All of a sudden it became the Energy Healing Institute. And where did Jill go?
Yes.
And wow, that's an important thing to remember for folks online, right?
It really is. There's got to be a way in which you're showing up in the world with your work as opposed to your work showing up in the world without you. It's very strange. It's a really interesting and strange phenomenon. And at first, I sort of loved the anonymity of it all. I have a client base in Boston that's more than 1,200 people. So I couldn't get a cup of coffee in Boston without running into somebody, Right. Well, here I am in Oregon now, and I'm starting to run into people. But it's because I live here, not because I work here. Right. So it's been a very interesting very interesting transition.
Yeah, they didn't have that initial experience. And I think that's so important, especially too, yeah, given our age, we were raised where you branded as a business. You never
Right,
put a shingle out on your
right,
name, right?
right,
Anybody else can relate to that? You
right.
created a name for your business. I know Hubris, who's watching, he's gone back and forth on that because his company is Social Identities. But the reality is, Hubris is the man we all know and love for our online social identity creating.
Mhm.
So, it's very difficult to have, let go of that traditional, I'm going to create a name like Possibility Partners. And how do I keep the Ande Lyons brand moving forward and creating the Andelicious experience and without, becoming invisible as well behind that. So I think you brought up a really good point on that
Mhm.
type of transitioning. And I know as humans that or people walking through life that we tend to want to keep things routine. We like the predictability.
Mhm.
I, however, am not that person. I tend to, the minute I get into a role of predictability, I stir things up. So, things I have to remember, maybe folks watching can relate. I have to have variety in what I do to keep that from happening. But I have just such a deep compassion and understanding of what it's like to be, focused on your path and being really clear about what you want to do. And then, whoopsie daisy, you're complete either with your work, your relationship, or out of the blue, your business where you're employed is complete with you. See you
Yes.
later. But uh, studies show 98.9% of people who are let go from a job end up somewhere else that they're happier at, even
Yes.
though it's so scary. And
So
as entrepreneurs and business owners, we have to know and trust that it's the same for us. So there you were, Jill, minding your own business and realizing that you needed to become more fully standing in the presence of Jill Leigh, not the Energy Healing Institute. So what does that look like now that you came to that understanding?
I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you credit for a huge piece of this, Ande, because we were in a meeting not too many months ago where you said to me in the course of a conversation where I hadn't gotten there yet with this decision, you said you need your business to work for you, not you work for your business.
Wow. Yeah, that's a
That's
big
what you said.
time. Mm-hmm.
That was just so, and I sat back because honestly, Ande, it was like, well, no, there's a novel idea. I'm 57. I've run my own business since I was 1991, right? My business worked for me. Who knew? I have been, I've worked for my company, my 5 different companies that I've had over time. It's always been me working for them.
Right.
So I'm working that out now. And I think it will look like a lot of content that is available um, in a self-paced way. I have literally 1,200 pages of manuals that I have written in the last 5 years. It's time to write the books that I finally feel like I'm ready to write them, and I'm ready to talk about what I want to talk about. And I think it's going to be a very interesting thing to see what the teaching model becomes. In the last few months, as I've been working my way through this, I've had several people come up to me and say, I have loved every single thing that you have brought into the classroom and taught us, but I want to know what you know that you don't teach in the classroom. So there's things that I don't, you make a program and it's going to look like what it looks like, and you'll extend beyond it in certain ways. But you may or may not bring all of what you know to the table. So I suspect that there's going to be some things that I am doing that are much more about someone coming to me and saying, I think you know something about this. I want that piece with you. And maybe it's one-on-one or small groups, or I don't even know.
But see, I love that you're hanging out in the mystery. It's okay to hang out in the mystery, everybody. I know I'm a driver. I'm an A-type personality. I want to figure it out, worked out, problem solved. Let's go. But sometimes we have to go, geez, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's around the corner. But the common theme that I'm seeing for you is the teaching element throughout your entire career,
Yeah.
that is definitely what you're called to do. And, thank you so much for the kudos on the uh, your business should be working for you. I feel that way
That's
about
right.
social. I feel that way about social media too. It should be working for you. And a lot of times we do. We become the servant of our business, and
Absolutely.
it's just not healthy. I'm not saying that's easy to figure out, but it's an important element that we have to figure out in our work, whether it's delegating or finding a new way to be in our business. So the transition is happening.
Okay.
There's the thread of learning and awakening another part of yourself. And see, this is the beauty I feel, Jill, about life, and you can express more about this as well, is instead of looking at these moments as, hair pulling, oh no moments, looking at them and embracing them and
Absolutely.
allowing them, without saying, being a little too airy fairy here,
Right.
magic
Right.
dust, woo. Um, but understanding that it really is our mindset that brings us peace and joy and happiness. And if we're going to fight the change, gosh, how many times have we all done that, right? Trying to beat down that brick wall, but doing what Jill has shown us as an example. And I'm sure there's more brave and courageous examples here with folks watching live or via replay. Times where we said, okay, all right, I get that. And how do you feel about it? What do you have to say?
Well, I just yesterday, as I was contemplating all of this, I found this quote on Facebook that I just printed it out so I could share it today, because it's by someone named William C. Hannan. And it says, I know this transformation is painful, but you're not falling apart. You're falling into something different with a new capacity to be beautiful.
Oh,
Now, is that
oh,
not awesome? I
oh,
mean, because really, I feel like I delivered some really great stuff in the old, in the old Energy Healing Institute model, and I've gotten a lot of kudos for that, and I've gotten a lot of support for that, and yet I can't do it anymore. I can't stand in that place. So there's some way in which I now get to do something else in some other way, and it comes out in a way that somehow, some way, I'm going to figure out how to be beautiful in that too. So
I think for anybody watching who is struggling through a transition, who's sitting there scratching their head and feeling like a loser, that is really important. I've been there, done that. Be gentle with yourself, talking to me, Ande, but also, understand that this is a time for you to step into new beauty and into a fully expressed version of yourself. Because as we evolve, we have more to give. We have different parts of ourselves to give, and we need to take gratitude in how we have served. And I know you got the mortgage to pay and kids to get through college and all of that, but it's so important. Now let's talk about, the I would like to call it kind of like the bumper period. It's happened. You stood in and you went, oh gosh, I can't stand here anymore. Well, it doesn't mean that we have to go marching off and figuring it out right away. Again, talking to myself. Um, but I think it's important that we might need to relax into it for a minute and just sort of, put all the fears and concerns and doubts to the side. They're important. But how do you feel about that? A transition, a timeout, so to speak, between transitions and
absolutely.
opportunities.
This all started for me in mid-April, and I really dialed it back. I didn't have as very much consulting stuff going on. I was doing minimal client work. I was scaling back my teaching. I also happened to be selling a house in Maine and buying a house in Oregon and moving. And so there were a lot of other pieces that were going on in there, but I really just stopped because I thought, I can't figure this one out. I do not know what to do. I do not know. All I knew was the level of discomfort and annoyance and upset that I was in was telling me something that I had to pay attention to. And until I could get through the upset, I knew nothing was gonna evolve. So I did a lot of meditating. I did a lot of sitting. I did very little writing, which was very interesting. It was like I had nothing to say, nothing. So I stopped blogging. I stopped everything that had been doing very, very religiously, and just waited. And it wasn't until literally about 6 weeks ago that something came through, and I started to see my way and say, okay, I get it. And I still don't know. The only thing that really happened was I said, all right, I can close Energy Healing Institute down, and I can open up jillleigh.com, and I can migrate content. And that's what I know. And what happens next, I don't know. But as Laura says, it's all about getting quiet.
Right.
And I just feel so grateful that somehow, sometimes in those transitions, it's dicey enough that you do wonder, how am I going to pay the mortgage? How is this going to work? It just did. And most of the time, if you can sort of breathe through it, may not be the most simple thing you've ever done, but it somehow usually works itself out so that the little pieces, the bills get paid, the checks get written, the food goes on the table.
I think too that we have to honor what the prior chapter in our lives by either mourning, that period is gone, especially if it's something you really loved doing or you felt really safe doing, and to then come to peace with it. Yes.
Yeah, totally. I feel so peaceful now about the choice that I've made, even though there's really no major answers. I don't have a formula. In fact, I suspect I will never have a formula again. And I was a process consultant for so many years in call centers. And I sort of feel like my process days are behind me, that somehow I'm going to move into my flow days or something like that. And it'll just be a very different way of operating that's much more about what the call is in the moment, as opposed to got to do this grind, got to do that piece, got to make this thing happen by Tuesday. I don't know. It just feels like it's going to be a little different than that.
I love that. And I love what Walter said too. The transition begins when you allow it to. Most times you need to step back and take it in.
Yes.
Nicely said,
yes.
Walter. It's so true, because it's a shock. I think it's just like getting an illness, and trying to come to terms with that new evolution in your life, having to stop and honor your body, especially if you like to move quickly through the world. It takes time. Or sometimes when we have children, we get stopped because now we're parents. And boy, that can really stop you in your tracks, right, parents? The needs of the family. And then the positive side of transition is the old, whew, this too will pass, right?
Oh, absolutely.
When you're going. Oh, and Hugh says, yeah, just stay in bed until it happens.
I like that, Hugh. You're onto something.
But Laura also says, trust and listen, expect miracles and they will appear. Oh, yeah, that's a mindset that's so important, Laura. Thank you for that. Embracing change, evolution, and in business, managing the change, because if you've got a thriving business going along, maybe you have 20, 100 employees, and you've got to stay on top of innovation. And you have to, the call centers moved to India. In your case, you need to, keep testing and keep growing your business in new markets and with new products. And boy, who has had a product launch completely fall flat and fail, no customers showed up, or a product that was a favorite for a long time, all of a sudden it's like the customers all went, oh, we're now interested in this over here. I mean, you can't take it personally. And again, I think it's part of taking the who moved our cheese or who moved my cheese and applying it to our business, so that we're always looking and anticipating a bit of that change and a bit of that evolution that happens, but again, not getting caught up in, oh, well, then what does it have to be? Sometimes it's getting quiet. and letting the answers come to us, and instead of the forcing it to happen. So before I get everything ready for the after show glow party, and folks, that's when I hit end record here and the replay content is all set. And then folks can hop in and say hi to me, to Jill, ask questions, share your success stories, share your transition stories. But before we get there, Jill, what is it that you're loving about this process right now and the work that you believe that you might be going into?
I think I feel so grounded and so centered within myself that I am so trusting that this is the right move for me, and that thus it'll be the right move for everybody I'm in relation to. My students are going to benefit from this. My clients will benefit from this, because I'm going to be in the in the role within myself that I can do best and understand, which is to be Jill Leigh and bring what I have to the world. So that's what feels best.
And folks, you've got to stay tuned in with all that's transitioning for Jill. You can find her on Facebook. Where else do you like to hang out, Jill?
I'm on Facebook. I'm coming back to Twitter. You've done it, Ande. You talked me into it. So I'm coming back to Twitter. I blog.
Yep, that's wonderful, because I have to tell you, I've seen the coming attractions of her new logo, and it is centered, it is grounded, yet it's uplifting. It feels like something new and vibrant is happening in a wonderful way. I get goosebumps, Jill. I'm so excited.
Thank you.
About all that's happening for you, and as a result, all the folks that you work with in the world. Any last advice regarding transition and change and evolution and getting through it all?
Yeah, just really trust that if it's happening, it's because you're evolving and growing, and you're becoming. I love that word, becoming, because if you put a little hyphen in the middle there, becoming, it's a very, very beautiful thing to realize where I was is not where I am now, and I can move forward from here.
That's awesome. Thank you, thank you, thank you for joining me. Live viewers, watching your comments and just feeling your wonderful energy today. Thank you for taking the time to join us live. And replay viewers, how honored are Jill and I that you tuned in and watched. And we'd love to hear from you, your thoughts about transition. Are you going through a similar change? Did something come out of the blue and happen to you? We're here to continue the conversation with you. Everywhere we go, we're ready to chat, right, Jill?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for tuning in. Again, I'm so grateful. I'm blowing you moise and wishing everybody an Andelicious day. I'm in awe and wonder of your journeys and all you're going through. And again, a huge thank you to my beautiful guest, Jill Leigh, for having the courage and the vulnerability to share her transitioning time with us today. It's really amazing. Thank you, everybody. All right. Thank you.